day going, Biggs? Are you cool?
Oh, it's been a good day. I worked today, but a little tired, but not too tired.
Yeah, I won't keep you too long
Uh,
then, mate. So
no worries, no worries.
no worries. So you've just done a tour. You're back on the road. You were with Black Dahlia Murder, and I believe you've got a tour coming up in Europe as well. Is that right?
We're sussing out some details about the European tour right now, as I'm sure you know isn't too unexpected from you folks over there right now.
Yeah,
But I can say with some certainty that we'll make our way over to that end of the world sooner, and several times
I hope
with
so.
next year.
When
So
yeah,
nothing to worry about there.
when the plague is subsiding. So, oh, something that I've always loved about Rivers of Nile is that you guys are generally you're so diverse and flexible in the way that you conduct what you have to offer. You're balancing atmospheric, sometimes gentle, powerful elements running through your music, and then you come thundering in with a contrast of some like proper filthy heavy tones. Um, when you guys get creating your records, do you have a vision of what you want the end result to sound like?
Um, sure. I mean, there's always like a discussion prior to any real writing that goes on where like we'll talk about what we want the record to feel like, or how we want it to play out. But there's one thing when you talk about it, and then when you are go to actually construct songs and construct the list together, like things change, and I kind of like to let the process of writing the album change me and influence itself that way too. So it's a more organic growing thing, and it sort of just reveals itself to us in its own way usually, and so sometimes it's really random and maybe diverse, it's some, but I feel like we always have a something that wrangles everything together in a way that makes sense, hopefully. It does to me anyway.
It does. It's a lot of it is very beautiful. So, I do you collectively songwrite, or is there like part of you that has, certain I suppose like a responsibilities?
Mm. Yeah, a lot of the instrumental portions of the songs, are uh, product of Brody, our guitar player. His hard labors, just working in his home studio, making demos day by day, and usually when we start a record, he'll be able to write like portion of a song or maybe a couple riffs strung together, and he'll send it to me, and then we'll talk about it and see how it grows from there. But usually by the end of a record, he'll just be cranking out songs,
Yeah,
and then all I have to do is go over them and write bass lines and vocal parts, which piece of cake, right?
so they say. Yeah. So, I guess that like with technical death metal is one of the most varied genres out there. However, I feel like you guys go really outside the box anyway. You incorporate different instruments, strings, vocal styles, drums into creating like a deep connection to the listener.
We try. That's the intention. I feel like a lot of times, and especially lately, that technical death metal in particular, as a micro genre of itself, but even just extrapolated out to death metal and extreme metal genres, they feel a little closed off
Mm,
sometimes. They feel a little like, all like, if all music is just an emotional expression, really, like sometimes death metal feels like you're growling your words, you're not saying what you mean very clearly, you're not really expressing anything but just a raw, like, emotional outburst. And I mean, there's obvious exceptions to all of this, but traditionally it's been it seems kind of oddly bottled off in an emotional way, in my opinion. And so, and I've always been a guy that's really looking for that those moments of truth when I listen to music. Like, is this music telling me something about the human experience that is worth hearing?
Yeah,
And there's only so much that can be said with songs about chopping people's heads off, or like
yeah,
science stuff, or like outer space, like just the and so I don't know. I guess the plan is always to just connect the two things, this kind of cold technical artifice of death metal with a more true emotional kind of experience that I enjoy from, like, I don't know, Beatles records or something like that.
yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, music, I think I find that the beauty of music is that you can interpret it to be how you interpret it. It's like everyone has a different layer. Do you know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's always dependent on the listener, and that's yeah. So I guess it's just that's been my interpretation of death metal as a whole, is just sort of maybe some of these guys just need therapy or something.
I like what to you makes a good songwriter?
um, Somebody who gets to the truth of the matter. Like, there's sometimes you have guys who are really good technical songwriters who really get the nuts and bolts of things down, and they write a good song by the numbers. Like,
Mm,
there's the best example I can think of like that is guys like a Steven Wilson, maybe, kind of
yeah,
comes to mind. He's like, it's like he's got the secret formula and he ain't sharing it. but
yeah,
but
yeah,
but then you've got like guys like Lou Reed, for example, like he who just is just kind of up there. He's got a gravelly, unbearable voice in a lot of ways, but he's saying things that are real, and his delivery is honest, and the songs just feel like he's telling you something that you need to hear.
that
So
makes
there's
sense.
so both of those things I think are valid, and they're both good songwriters in their own particular way.
Yeah, absolutely. You released the new album, The Work, very recently. I feel like there is massive more layers and levels to this new record. Um, do you feel you have evolved somewhat since ours?
I should hope so. I have always said that I think if we're just doing the same thing over and over again, like, what's the point? Like, if I find it difficult when people are like, you should, why don't you just write something like this record again? And then, and it's like, I can't, like, I'm not that person. I'm not the same person who made that record anymore. And
Yeah,
so those things there are moments in time, and we can always appreciate them. They're not going anywhere, but everything moving forward hopefully is different. It shows healthy growth, and like, you can't expect a person who's really being honest with their artistic self and like who they are as a person, as a songwriter, if they're just churning things out just to make people happy.
yeah, that's it exactly, and that's the essence of being a musician as well, I think. Um, there is something that I notice. I'm not sure if you've spoken about it before. Maybe you can shed some light. For every album you release, you have different numerics and titles for your instrumental tracks,
Mhm.
terrestrial, on each album. On the work, your terrestrial track work is lyrical. Is there a concept to the terrestrial tracks at all?
There's sort of well, because they're each record is its own season.
Hmm.
Um, it was Conscious Seed of Light started in spring, so that was thaw. The spring thaw coming through. It's those are like, if there's any moments on any record that's on each of those records, that's like is that's like the just raw expression of the seasonal theme, it would be that thing. Like I feel like they always kind of describe the album artwork a little bit to me. But
Yeah,
this last one felt like, so this is the end, and we have this big track, and it feels like it needs words, and it needs Jake's participation. Like we're not going to just close this thing out and leave him out of it. Like
yeah,
it's that, you know, and that's what it felt like the right thing to do, you know.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
and but yeah, so those were on this one, like they serve each terrestrial movement sort of serves different functions on each record, really. They just sort of, you know, become that thing. But this one, it was it was the ending credits, it's the epilogue, it's the end, it closes everything up for the past four records. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, my favorite is number two, Thrive. Though I do really love how Wither was put together too. It's like I say, it's very beautiful, and you've got some almost like biomechanical urban elements laced through it. I find, as I said earlier, that music is generally open to interpretation. So this record for me has got so much going on in it, so many different vibes and emotions. What does this album do for you?
it's it does quite a bit to me. Like it brings up a lot of it's by far the most personal I've ever gotten with any art, and it's there are things on it that in a lyrical sense, and where I think if you haven't lived my life exactly, you might not know what's going on.
Yeah,
But the experiences aren't exactly unique to any one person, and there's struggles that I think a lot of people go through, and hopefully was expressed in a way that we can relate together. It's just it's a big concept. It's supposed to be kind of a just it's a picture of life in like harsh turns. Like
yeah,
you like it's, you know, there's your work in everything you do, in relationships, in survival, in making, you know, making progress in yourself and your mind and your faith and all sorts of things takes deep examination. And I think a lot of the songs can be looked at from multiple angles like that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's down to like a personal kind of progression. I get that from this album a little bit. Like I don't know what it is. I just feel very connected to this album as well. Um, I've had it on loop for the last 2 weeks, you know. So it sounds a bit obsessive though, but like it's you know, I think when you find something that you can connect to, that's when you kind of root yourself in it, you know. So
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's great to hear. I mean, it is kind of, it was a project sort of born out of a lot of dark feelings, and
yeah,
but you know there is like a yearning for positivity in there, and I think that that's, you know, something that a lot of people can relate to,
yeah,
especially nowadays. We've kind of found life to get complicated unnecessarily, or you know, just things are just out of your control. Like the, you know, just like the train cars on the front of the record is just crashed. It's just society is just that fragile. Like it's
yeah,
just this big artifice, you know, and you know what's important, what's like the meaning of life is that safety and security and happiness you can derive from all of that craziness, and that warm cabin where you're listening to your favorite records. It's kind of
yeah,
the feeling of that.
yeah. I mean, I was going to ask about the artwork for this album as well. It is stunning. I can see actually some similarities between the artwork for the work in the first album that you had. I guess the layout, but the landscape totally contrasts each other. So you have the cabin, and in the first one you have the doorway, and you have the two towers and the different skylines, you know.
Yeah, it's been, so it's kind of not to, I guess, to give away the whole hog here, but it is just, you know, the overall concept of each record as they've bridged together, like it's just supposed to show that we're back in the same place, but it's different. It's not what it used to be. And yeah, like it's, you know, we've gone through, like, in on the conscious seat of light, everything looks like, you know, Mayan statues and all sorts of like civilization of old. And then now you have the our civil, like, remnants of our civilization on the
Yeah,
rocks. And that's just, you know, and it kind of just points to the different feelings on the record, like the tower being struck down, and the work that needs to be done there, and the warmth of the cabin, and the security of that, and, you know, what one complements the other, and there's this big void between everything, and
yeah,
there's just the amount of things that you have to deal with to be a human are
yeah,
sort of the expression there.
yeah, absolutely. And I feel that there's that kind of link to your first track as well, which is called The Tower. So, you know, I feel that there is a concept there as well, between that and the artwork for both of those albums as well, actually. So,
Mhm. Yeah,
uh,
yeah. The tower is actually inspired by the tarot card, the tower, and that's always, and in tarot, the tower symbol means that, you know, you're in a tumultuous time of, you know, things being torn down, as we've all been,
yeah,
uh, you know, myself included, during the past 2 years. You know, it's been strange time, in particular for me, but I imagine it was for a lot of people. But it also means the potential to rebuild, and to learn from the reconstruction of these things, and to build a better future. And so that's what the tower means. It's just this idea that there's always a little farther to go. So
yeah,
both tower songs on the record, that's the point you find yourself at each one.
yeah, to keep rising. So,
Hmm.
yeah, absolutely. Was there anything about the production of this album that you did differently from the process of previous albums?
Yeah, a little bit. For the most part, it was, you know, the strings were all recorded by Brody by himself, you know, in his home studio, and then we moved to Atrium Audio, uh, you know, who did the last two records as well, to do pretty much everything else. But this time I actually did my bass tracks there as well, because of the pandemic, and, you know, having to come up to track in Brody's house was just not a possibility. So I did the bass just sort of on the spot in the studio there, while I was trying to do the vocals too, and it was a little chaotic, but I think it turned out for the best.
It
And
definitely worked. So,
there was a lot of anxiety in my process of this, and I think it comes out in a unique way on the record, but it's real, and that's all I wanted it to be.
yeah, and it's raw, isn't it? So,
Mhm.
it shows. So, I love it. It's one of my favorites of this year. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
um, I was going to say that I'm looking forward to your show on the Faces of Death in Birmingham, but whether or not that goes ahead.
Yeah,
um, so in that case, what does 2022 look like for you guys? Um,
we have a lot of touring that's either lined up or in the process of being lined up, which you know, is great. We want to get out there and play these songs, and, you know,
Absolutely.
get back to work, as it were. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
so we'll do
Absolutely.
that, and just keep this thing going as long as we can.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I hope to see you guys over here, because I was really, 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 really looking forward to it.
We'll be over
Um,
there sooner, you know, sooner hopefully than, you know, than you'd think.
Absolutely. Finally, really, what advice do you have for other musicians during these times,
During these times?
or at all?
um, be just as always, I guess. I don't know. Be honest with yourself. That's really all you can do. If you know you if you're in the process of making something, be honest with yourself about it. If you're not sure whether or not this thing is for you anymore, uh, go with that, I guess. It's hard to say. I'm figuring this out on my own as well. I'm maybe some advice would be good for me too. But it's it's yeah, I guess everybody's their own different person. I can't it to like And that's like the important thing I try to remember in all of this, is that as much as people are just screaming for you to write or keep touring or do this or do that, just whoever you are, just take care of yourself first,
Yeah,
and and then the art will come.
it will
So
fall into place, yeah,
yeah,
as it
that's
should do.
yeah.